Welcome to the Firefly Tutors TV podcast, where real teachers from all over the country discuss real solutions for parents and educators alike. Here's your host, Marissa Johnston.
Hello and welcome to The Buzz, brought to you by Firefly Tutors TV, where we talk to administrators, educators, and parents all across the country about current topics affecting school children today. We're fortunate to have two guests with us today. Diane Cutler Lewis is an educator, entrepreneur, and philanthropist committed to helping students reach their highest potential. She founded A In Home Tutors in 2003 to promote educational awareness and customized learning for students of all backgrounds and grade levels. The organization has grown to be one of the leading tutoring vendors to many charter schools and community partners throughout California. In 2021, Diane launched Firefly Tutors, presented by A In Home Tutors, to continue to expand tutoring services with the goal of more positively impacting greater numbers of students in all 50 United States. Welcome to the podcast, Diane Lewis. Thank you so much for joining me. And who is joining you today?
Well, thank you, Marissa. I have the pleasure of introducing Joe Schmitz. He is the CEO of Fit Leasing, a private equipment leasing company. He and his wife, Shar, have raised two lovely collegiate daughters who continue to make positive footprints in this world. Joe is a former board member of Orangewood Academy, and I'm proud to call him my friend. So thank you for joining us on The Buzz, Joe.
Thanks, Diane. Happy to be here.
So, Joe, what did you and your daughters learn from the college selection and admissions process that could help other parents who are navigating that same process at this time?
Right. So, start early. You can get into a junior college if you decide, near the end of your senior year, I want to go to a community college. That's an easy process. To apply for any college, you do that at the very beginning of your senior year, but that's not when you start thinking about it. I think to apply, in our case, either to the local Cal State system or to colleges associated with our high school, anytime, early in your junior year is okay to think about it. But if you're thinking about something other than that, a specialty school, then honestly, I think starting at your freshman year or before is not too soon to think about it. In part because, what classes are you going to take? I didn't necessarily realize when we started the high school experience that our school had different types of high school degrees, and it depended on the types of classes you took, gave you one type of high school degree or another type of high school degree, and that reflected in terms of what colleges we're going to look at. It might even come into play in terms of your junior high experience. My oldest daughter took algebra when she was a freshman. My youngest daughter took algebra when she was in 8th grade, which gave her the opportunity to do different kinds of math courses in different scenarios so there was a difference between the two, and that created some more educational opportunities. But if you start thinking that as a sophomore, you won't have an opportunity to make those choices. So I say that, but I'll also say, as my wife Charlotte will often say, I'm a bit of a tiger dad. I want the best for my kids. We all do. But sometimes that means that I put pressure on them when they want to be 12, and they should have the right to be 12 or 14 and experience life and enjoy life, rather than thinking, am I doing this because my dad wants me to? I don't know if that makes any sense, but in some ways I would prep earlier, but I would also work harder not to put that pressure on them and let them make their own choices, even if it's one that I think might not lead to the result that I would want for them. This is their life, and they get to make those choices as to what that should be, even if they don't necessarily understand all the ramifications. So it's a balancing act. And I might say, hey, this is what you want for college. Well, when you're in 8th grade, you're not thinking, well, this may get me into a UC school or a school, a private school university versus this other choice. And so you have to balance that as a parent.
That's very humble of you, Joe.
That's funny. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Tell us more about the difference between each of your daughters chose a different type of college to attend. And I know your oldest is finishing up at a Cal State university, and your youngest has chosen to go to a much smaller private university. So, what has that been like for each of them? And I know they're completely different personalities and just learning styles, everything. They're different individuals. So, share a little about their journeys.
Right. So for my oldest, she's in a school with 40,000 students, and she had 25 kids in her graduating high school class. That's a big adjustment, and we can
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that. But she has lived at home during this process, and so financially, it's been fabulous, right? I mean, you can go to a good school, very good school, and do it inexpensively with those options. It is a bit overwhelming, and even though there are lots of resources because there's a lot of money given to large schools, it's also very impersonal, so it's hard to find help in terms of a particular person's direction that they want to go. And so they don't necessarily have good guidance in the process. There's a reason why at the public university system, I think the last numbers I saw, it was like 7 years to graduate. And you go, well, how could that be if it's 4 years worth of courses, or 3.5 if you're super diligent? Well, it's navigating the process, as well as people make changes along the way. But did they get good advice along with that? For my youngest, who is now, she's nearing the end of her first year, and there's 1,500 students, and from that perspective, it's vastly different. She has an advisor, and she has an opportunity to meet with that advisor anytime she wants. And in fact, there are regularly scheduled meetings. It's like once a month or something like that. So there are regular scheduled meetings that she has with her advisor to make sure she's on track, who's also asking about what's happening in her various classes and how she's doing. And there's other help and tutoring help that's easy to access. And because the class sizes are small, I think her largest class, a lecture class, has maybe 60 students in it, and most of her classes are 20 or less. Your teachers, your teachers know you. You can connect outside of class if you have questions, whether it's by email or chat or what have you, or have office hours to see your teachers. And so there's great access. And also because it's smaller and because she lives on campus, she's had an opportunity to really connect with other students, both in her classes as well as in her dorm and what have you, and has created a very nice friend network. So I think for her, that experience has been better. For us, it's a lot more expensive. So the choices are, there's trade-offs on either side, and how we do that in a way that's cost effective and doesn't burden our child with enormous amounts of debts or things that we have to think about.
Thank you, Joe. Anything else you want to add to your daughter's experiences?
So I do. I have kind of one other key point, and my daughter gave me the permission to talk about this, and that is with my oldest, when she made the transition to the public university with the really enormous amounts of people, it was challenging for her. I mean, she had been a big deal at her other school in terms of, she had academic success, and she was a captain on her volleyball team, and she led their choir group, and was student body officer, and really had the success, and all of a sudden she felt lost, and she also felt pressured to do well in a system that she just didn't quite understand, and we didn't understand what she was going through. And she went to school for a number of years, and then she wrote us a letter, and she said, it's the only way I can express myself, and I don't quite know how to say this, but I'm experiencing depression.
Mm.
And even though she lived with us, we did not know. And she was quite frank and poignant. She said, I understand that I have been given every advantage. I've had great schooling and loving parents and a safe place to live, and I feel even more guilty that I feel this way. This was difficult. So I'm immensely proud of her that she found the courage to communicate with us. And again, she didn't talk to us. She wrote it out. It was this 3-page letter that was it was heartbreaking to read. And as a parent, you feel guilty. So you feel, I'll just express what we felt. We felt tremendous guilt that we didn't see this. We also felt guilt that we didn't recognize what was going on, and we felt guilt wondering about how we contributed to these things. And we were determined to fix it. And the thing is, as we learned in the process, that's not our role. And it's also not something that it's fixed. It's not you take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning. The reality is depression is an illness. It's a recognized illness, and it's not one well understood, and it's not one well treated. In conjunction with our daughter, who was an adult at this time, she was able to find counseling. But I would also say that also can be a process. She may, or whoever may find a counselor, and those resources are out there, but it may not be the right fit. And these are hard questions to ask. And as parents, we wanted to help her, but the reality is our role wasn't to do that. It was simply to be there. I don't know if that makes sense. And it's been an ongoing process. She took about a year off of school. She changed her major. That created more difficult challenges because the work she had done before didn't prepare. She had another year of schooling in order to get into the major she finally chose. And it has been an ongoing process. And I don't know that it's not I'm now fixed. It's I'm doing better, if that makes any sense. And she allowed us to talk about this because we understand that this is an issue in society, and it's an issue amongst children, that the numbers of depression in teenagers, in school children, are at all-time highs. Certainly COVID and isolation made that worse. Last night I watched an interview with the journalist David Brooks, and he talked about a recent column he wrote that was called "How Do I Help My Friend?" Or "How Do I Serve a Friend in Despair?" And he talked about his longtime friend who had a great family and was an orthopedic surgeon, and yet he had an immense battle with depression. In spite of the fact you look at that person's life and you go, they have everything. So that's not, it could be home-based, it could be school-based, but it could be none of those things. So I would just encourage people to be aware. In our case, our daughter became very withdrawn. She was always introspective, so we didn't necessarily recognize it. If she hadn't reached out to us, we wouldn't have known. So really spending time with your kids, getting to know them and giving them a safe space so they can be open with you about what's going on in their lives, and then not being afraid to seek professional help. It shouldn't be a stigma. It should be, this is a resource to help assist and provide support that people need, and that's okay.
Thank you for sharing, Joe. My heart just it's open, and yet I feel sadness, but knowing your daughters, both of them, I'm so proud of each of them. And you and your wife Shar are incredible parents that open your hearts and give your children, your daughters grown now, a safe space. No matter what, you will love them unconditionally. And yes, as parents, we always have our own agenda of what we think success looks like. But I applaud you for recognizing that that's not always what our children want. And so that's huge for you as parents. And I'm just high-fiving you and giving you a hug, because this is going to help other parents as well. And so I'm so grateful that you've been able to share your story with your daughters on this podcast, The Buzz. And Marissa, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Diane. And Joe, thank you very much for sharing. It is a difficult conversation to have, but an important one.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for the chance to share. And I guess the one thing we wanted for our daughters is to teach them to think for themselves. And we are very proud of who both of them have become.
I'm proud of them too.
Thank you so much to our guest speaker today, Joe Schmitz. It has been an absolute pleasure. And Diane, as always, it is so wonderful to have you on.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thanks, Marissa. Nice being with you.
If you enjoyed our discussion today, please like Firefly Tutors on all your social media hubs like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Find us on Pinterest, where we pin all of our favorite resources for parents and tutors. At Firefly Tutors, we believe every student deserves the opportunity to develop to their highest potential. See you next time on The Buzz.